Hello and welcome to Public Forum. I'm Amandra Bhatt. The world's largest democratic exercise is now complete. Votes have been cast and results will be out tomorrow. This election has been a record-setting one in more ways than one. Not only did the country witness its highest ever voter turnout, it also turned out to be the most expensive election in the country's history, entailing an expenditure of over 3,000 crores to the exchequer. Not only did the government spend the highest ever amount in its history in these elections, candidates and political parties also went all out when it came to displaying money power. It was demonstrated like never before. Today in Public Forum, we discuss the role money power has played in these elections and should political parties and their donors be more transparent. And to discuss the same, we are joined in our studios by three distinguished guests. Please welcome Anil Verma. He is Head of National Election Watch with Association for Democratic Reforms. Welcome to Public Forum, Mr. Verma. Sitting next to him is T.R. Ramachandran, Senior Journalist. Welcome to Public Forum, Mr. Ramachandran. We are also joined by Professor Ashwin Ray. He is a noted political analyst. Welcome to Public Forum, Professor Ray. Mr. Verma, I'd like to begin with you. Before we come to, the amount spent by political parties and candidates in this election, the cost to the exchequer, it seems, has also gone up considerably since 2009. In 2009, it was around 1,400 crore rupees, and this time it's 3,426 crore rupees. What do you think are the reasons for this jump? The Election Commission attributes it to inflation and to the number of steps that they had taken to make sure that people turn out in large numbers to vote.
Yes. Now, before I start, I'd like just to give you a little bit of statistics.
Sure.
Out of the 8,230 candidates for the entire Lok Sabha campaign, there are 17% with the criminal cases, out of which 11% are with serious criminal cases. There are 27% crore-patis, and the average asset of each candidate is about rupees 4.93 crores. Of course, people like Nandan Nilekani, and there's a lady from West Bengal, they have scored the average because Nandan Nilekani was 7,700 crores and this lady is 2,000 crores. But notwithstanding that, coming to the point of the increase in the expenditures, from the first to the sixth Lok Sabha poll, the expenditure per elector was less than rupee 1.
Right.
And in 2009, it is around rupees 12 per elector, per voter. And from 2009 to 2014, there is a 131% increase in the total expenditure by the government.
Right.
We are talking only about the government.
Yes.
And like you mentioned, it is 3,426 crores. Now, as per the Election Commission, the basic reason is one, inflation. Second, the sweep campaign which they launched, in which they really went out to the voter and tried to increase the vote percentage, and which has visibly, I think, resulted also in an increase of about 9 to 10% overall voter turnout.
Right.
And apart from that, they went for a lot of other issues like video filming of all the things, micro filming the voters list, and a lot of such activities, and they are attributing the rise to these reasons.
So these are the factors that have contributed not just to the record voter turnout, but also to the fact that this has been the most expensive election the country has witnessed.
Yes.
Mr. Ramachandran, but in this election we've seen money power demonstrated like never before. Political parties going all out in their expenses, and the corporates, the media going completely joining forces, coming together to project certain personalities, and as is being alleged, just one personality or one particular party. What do you think of the role media has played in this election?
I think this is a very debatable issue, because the opinion about the kind of role that the media has played swings from one end of the pendulum right to the other.
Right.
I have not seen anybody take a mid-course as far as the media is concerned. Be that as it may, I think you're very right when you point to the media focusing on one particular gentleman, quite disproportionate to what that party has really been able to do, either in Delhi or now in the general elections all over the country. But I think it's also because, Amanda, for one reason that, he was a king. He was really a killer kind of a person during the assembly elections in Delhi. He is contesting elections for the first time, and he stood against the chief minister, Mrs. Sheila Dikshit, and he defeated her by a huge, unimaginable margin. Be that as it may, I don't think you can repeat that kind of a performance all the time. And this time you are standing against a person who is the BJP's prime ministerial nominee, Mr. Narendra Modi, and that too from Varanasi. He's had a good number of people who've gone and supported him. People in Varanasi have spoken very highly of him. But as of now, the results are coming out tomorrow. I doubt if Mr. Kejriwal can really repeat being the giant killer that he was in Delhi. So I think they have also realized the problems that they encountered, and they also realized that the result may not go in his favor. But I think if you see it in the overall context, it is possible for a party of this kind to make an impression. It did make a very favorable impression in Delhi, and it is going to make a minimal kind of impression in the general elections. It's only 1.5 years old. You can't really find candidates to contest from all the 543 seats, and even if you find them to contest, they are not really organized in the manner that the major political parties are really organized. And even among the major parties, it is only the Congress which is able to contest all the 543 seats, and even the main opposition is not able to make its impact on all the seats or even contest meaningfully in all the 543 seats of the Lok Sabha. So in the overall analysis, if you see, there are many gaps that needs to be filled, and the arrival of the regional satraps in this country about three and a half decades ago, which started in the south and has slowly come down to the north, I think is making quite an impact. Don't forget that the Congress party, which ruled this country without a break for about 4 decades or so, has suddenly found that its vote bank is getting splintered, and what they used to take for granted, they're not getting votes from those sections at all. Therefore, the Hindi heartland, which continues to hold sway, that if you want to form the government at the center, you need to do very well in Uttar Pradesh, which contributes the maximum number of 80 seats to the Lok Sabha. In the case of BJP, if you see it very closely, their entire concentration has been on UP and in the Hindi heartland. More than 70% of their seats are going to come from here, will come from this area of the Hindi heartland. And their two main battleground states, as they themselves called, was Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. They contribute 120 seats to the Lok Sabha. And they have not spoken very much about the south, though this time an effort has been made to knit alliances in the southern states. But they easily forget that the south, with 4 states and the union territory, contributes 130 seats.
Right.
And it is a huge number that you cannot afford to ignore. You need to make a breakthrough there if you need to have a presence at the center without the help of others. Anyhow, they did make an attempt in Tamil Nadu this time. They also have brought back Mr. Yediyurappa in Karnataka. They have a rainbow alliance in Tamil Nadu. They also have an alliance with the TDP in Andhra Pradesh. So hopefully they will make a breakthrough, maybe get about 10 or 15 seats. But the story ends there. Therefore, I think if you need to be a real competitor to the Congress, which I think you have been this time, but you need to have a pan-India presence, which the BJP does not have even now.
Okay.
So a lot they are depending on regional satraps. They have worked out arrangements with them who have got their spheres of influence and are managing to rule at least Uttar Pradesh is being ruled by regional satraps, whether it is Mayawati on the one side or whether it is the SP Mulayam Singh Yadav and now his son. Similarly, in the south, you have regional satraps who have been ruling Tamil Nadu for more than 3 decades.
Right.
So, in the overall context, I think yes, the first attempt has been made this time by Narendra Modi to really make inroads into areas where they have not, by knitting alliances with parties who have some presence in these states.
Right. Professor Ray, coming back to the issue of money power and the role money has played in this election, we are told that this 3,000 crore figure is just part of the larger 30,000 crore figure of that is, that's been spent by government, political parties and their candidates. What do you think is the reason for this exponential increase in the amount that's been spent this time?
Well, I think the official explanation, as I think which General Verma pointed out, is a highly optimistic version of the whole reality. I think if you looked at the number of multimillionaires, which only again he said, those who have declared themselves as multimillionaire, the official figure again is very optimistic. The number of multimillionaires who exist in the parliament, more than that, the number of multimillionaires who have become multimillionaires while in parliament, through parliament, is phenomenal. So, the expenses incurred is bound to be a lot more than what the official figure would indicate.
Right.
So, I think these are important issues that needs to be taken into account before the election commission draws up a figure of 70 lakhs or some such thing, again which is very, very optimistic. I remember a person like Biju Patnaik said in Orissa that if you want to become an MP in a state like Orissa, you require about 8 crores. In those days, I mean I am talking about 20-25 years back. So, today it must be phenomenally more expensive really, I do not know the figure which it cost, but I now have some idea of the number of multimillionaires who exist in our parliament, and given their resources and given their access to resources, I think it is anybody's guess how much it would be. So, the official explanation as given by the election commission is not a bad way to begin our calculation, but again to go entirely by that is very, very optimistic. This is simply part of the black money which exists in the country. It is to be seen in what way the incumbent Prime Minister, who with his great promise of bringing all the black money back, lives up to his promise.
Right.
But I will be a little and slightly going off the tangent of your direct question. I think Mr. Ramchandran has been a little unfair to at least Mr. Kejriwal if he tries to suggest that the media has given too much attention to him. If anything, the media in the last phase has given attention to the incumbent Prime Minister in a way that is quite amazing how much attention it has been able to get, even in the regional channels, the Bengali channels and Odia channels. Everywhere it is, is bar Modi Sarkar. It is amazing. So, in fact, it is true that to a certain extent in the earlier phase of the Delhi elections, probably the accusation of Mr. Ramchandran is slightly more valid, but to extend that to this time general election, I would like him to reconsider his view. If anything, the media has been, just fairly lukewarm about
right.
it.
We will come back to the role of media also and whether or not the media's credibility too is at stake.
No, media has done very well
sure,
for itself.
I'll come back to in just a bit. We have to take a break in the program. When we come back, we discuss the issue of corporate funding in election and whether money power is influencing the politics in the country. Welcome back to Public Forum. We are talking about the role of money power in the latest 2014 elections. Mr. Verma, I'll continue with you. We understand last year the government came out with an electoral trust scheme, which was basically an effort to streamline the whole process and bring in more transparency in the corporate funding of elections. Do you think that is something that has contributed to the kind of funding we have witnessed in these elections?
Yes. See, as you are aware, the present rule is that any donations to the political parties above 20,000 rupees only are to be reported
Right.
in the open. So let me put it here only that only 25% of the income which the political parties get is in the open. 75% we don't know anything about, because the political parties say this is below 20,000 rupees.
Right.
And there are parties like BSP which say that we have not got any donations above rupees 20,000. So what can you do about it?
Right.
Now, as far as the corporate funding is concerned, as per the company law, and these electoral trusts have been made, and they can, the corporates can contribute up to 5% of their profits into these electoral trusts. So point number one is that in case of the huge corporates, you can imagine what that 5% would be.
Right.
It will be a humongous amount. And the second thing is that once they are investing in any political party, obviously there will be quid pro quo. And they expect something when they come to power. So what our analysis is that we have done this thing survey, a report on the corporate donations, and we find that most of these electoral trusts contribute equally to both the major parties, because they're not sure who's going to come to power.
Okay.
So keep everybody happy. Out of this, the majority of the amount comes from the real estate sector and the mining sector. And so this is of course, this is a very small amount which is in the public domain. We do not know about the other contributions which are there, and that is the cause of worry. There was a study carried out by CMS last month, and they said that over the last 5 years in India, 1.5 lakh crore rupees has been spent on elections alone.
Right.
Out of which about 30,000-40,000 is on the Lok Sabha, then about 45 to 50,000 crores on the state assemblies, 30,000 on the panchayats, 20,000 crores on the mandals, and 10,000 crores on the Zilla Parishads. Now this is a study which has been carried out. It's
Right.
not fictitious figures. And we all know that half of this amount is black money.
Right.
So imagine what a huge amount it is. And we do not know where it is coming from, how it is coming from. There was another study carried out by certain DRI officials and certain forensic audit experts. They said that before the elections, of the last 2-3 months, amounts close to 1,500 to 2,000 crores flowed in from abroad in the form of gold smuggling, stocks, and hawala.
Right.
So this game of elections is being, sort of lubricated money, which is not a good sign at all for our economy, for our country.
Right.
And somehow the laws which are there are not implemented. Now, for example, they have found loopholes, to circumvent the law. I would put it that way. Like the RPA, Representation of People's Act, Section 77, lays down very clearly that the political party and the political party candidates have to their expenditure. Now, one is that the official expenditure which they declare, as you are aware, it was 40 lakhs earlier, and then the limit was raised to 70 lakhs. Now, even in 2009, when it was 40 lakhs, just 40 to 50% of the candidates declared an expenditure of 60 to 70%. Nobody crossed it. There were only 2 people who crossed it. Akhilesh Yadav, he crossed it to 110%. But then what happened? Nothing happened to them.
But what is the penalty for that?
That's what I'm saying. There are clauses which say that they have to be penalized, but nothing happens. So that is one part I was wanting to bring out. And the other aspect to it is another interesting this thing I'll give you. The donations, or rather the political parties, as to what they contribute to the expenditure on the canvassing and things like that. Now, for example, Congress said in their election expenditure report submitted to the income tax department that around 10 lakhs each was given to most of their ministers. But when the ministers' individual election expenditure reports were scrutinized by us, we found most of them had showed nil, nothing received from Congress. Similarly for BJP, they declared in their election expenditure report that they have not given any money to any BJP candidate.
Okay.
Whereas the BJP candidates gave in their election reports that they had received money from the BJP. So what I'm trying to bring out is the seriousness with which these reports are, prepared and filed with the income tax thing. So there is no system of cross-checking, verification, and things like that. It is just left at that.
Right. Mr. Ramachandran, not just this, but the 20,000 limit that Mr. Verma just mentioned, do you think it's time to revisit that?
I think it's a time to revisit virtually all the provisions that you have connected with elections. Because any provision that you have, see this, what has happened in this election, there's a big hullabaloo about the kind of corporate money that has really come into play in this election. People are not attaching any figures to it, nor do you find them in any of the literature that has come up about this election. But the fact is a lot of money from the corporate world has flown in, and the fact is probably that a lot of it has gone to one individual in the party which has nominated him as the prime ministerial nominee. And many people are saying this is all crony capitalists who have really funded the elections, and that is how you find this kind of an advertising blitzkrieg as far as this one individual is concerned. I am not imputing any motives either to the money that has come in or to the individual who is the prime ministerial nominee. But I think as General put here and made it very clear that there is money flowing in, most of it is black money, it's unaccounted for and no action is taken.
Right.
That is where the real question mark is. If most of the people are aware, including the economic agencies which need to look into it and pursue it, if that has been the case, why are they all, sitting quiet as though, nothing is happening around them? But the end result of this kind of contribution by crony capitalists or capitalists or the corporate sector, whatever you might like to say, it's essentially a quid pro quo.
Right.
You come to power. There is something that, I who have contributed to your election very substantially, I expect something in return.
Absolutely.
Not that this doesn't happen in the United States. In the United States, I think one of the major contributors to the elections of a president is the defense establishment. The military establishment there is so powerful and the amount of money that is had is unbelievable. And if the president gets elected, he is not ashamed in doing something special for that particular establishment. So at the end of the day, I think we also need to realize that, the Election Commission may have stepped in to say that we are appointing election expenditure commissioners for the first time in every constituency to keep a special watch on what the candidate is spending. But are they really able to do that? I don't think they really have the wherewithal to do it. They need to upgrade their technology to really get to the root of this issue.
Absolutely.
You also have to submit your accounts a month after the results are announced. Is everybody following that? I think the general here will be able to give us figures, but I don't think more than 40% of them are really submitting these accounts in time within that stipulated period. There are clear provisions which says, and the Supreme Court has in a decision in 1999, if I'm not mistaken, said if a wrong is found with regard to the accounts submitted on the expenditure incurred the elections by a candidate, and if something is found to be untrue, a petition can be filed in the court seeking the disqualification of this candidate. I have not seen any cases for quite a while now, especially on those counts. You've got video cameras, you've got additional assistant commissioners to deal with this issue, but nothing really has come out. But I think this is being implemented in a concentrated matter this time. This was introduced in 2010 and it is now in 2014 that this is being introduced, supervised and conducted in a far more concentrated manner.
Right.
Let us wait and see if something
if
comes
it
out.
yields some result. Professor Ray, as we were discussing, a little bit of electoral funding is declared to everybody, it's known to everyone, but you know there's a vast amount of money that's you know under the table, that's underneath, it's flowing underneath. Do you think this is something that gives rise to corruption, crony capitalism and the corporate neta nexus?
Yes, sure it does. I mean, and this whole you know, assumption that a little bit is declared doesn't give us any great excitement and satisfaction. Little bit was always declared, but the amount which is kept hidden is really the major part, the sort of black money.
Right.
I don't see, to be very frank, any easy way of getting out of this. It's an overall structure of you know, rule of law, which we know in the case of many other cases it's not observed. Just as in the case of you know, violence against women, all laws exist and yet we are not able to implement them.
Right.
There is a general absence of rule of law in the country, and unless that rule of law is established by clearly making, you know, providing punishment not only in law but actually implementing punishment in fact, unless that is done and shown to be done, I don't see any easy way in which you know, this black money problem can really be resolved. Black money is an enormous amount of money and in fact the major part of the money is really the black money. And as I said, I am looking forward to the day when the promised, you know, Prime Minister's promised that the black money would all be, you know, recovered. He lives up to this billing. And I think this is really the major part of the problem. How much of it is implemented in terms of rule of law? As a general principle in this country, apart from the absence of rule of law and respect for law, the general, you know, temptation to punish political offenders is very weak. No one knows who can become, you know, come to power. So no bureaucrat takes the risk of, you know, punishing a political person. And in fact, the general statistics that they give equal money to two political parties. I mean, which of the two political parties this time that they would have given? I am wondering in the national election, did they also support the Congress, some of them? And they must be very foolish if they did. I mean, no corporate world would have funded.
They would obviously want to fund the parties
all
that are likely
the
to
parties,
get the maximum
all
number
the
of
parties.
seats.
It is not
Right.
two parties, but all the parties. And in many parts of the country, the national parties are of no consequence. You know, for example, in Bengal and Orissa and much of the south, the national parties are of no consequence. So it is probably the BJP for long-term insurance towards the end of the election, but it had to be the regional parties. So it had to be all the political parties must have been funded by the corporate world.
Okay, I think General Verma would be able to
they must be expecting quid pro quo out of that.
Absolutely.
So the other important question, along with the knowing fully well how much was funded, is what are the political, you know, consequences of this funding?
Right.
What are the sort of quid pro quo?
I'll come back to that very important
being
issue
given.
that you've just raised. We have to take a break in the program. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Public Forum. We are talking about the role of money power in these elections. General Verma, if we look at the limit that has been set by the Election Commission, the limit of 70 lakh rupees per election per candidate, do you think that's enough? Because we all know that there is hardly any candidate who would strictly abide by that limit.
I would put it the other way. If in 2009, as per the statistics which we've got, none of them could spend the entire amount,
Right.
what was the need of raising it, firstly? Secondly, how does a common man contest elections? Can he afford to have this much of money? He can't. So is it providing a level playing field to everybody in the country? And that is one of the main reasons why normal, honest individuals who would like to contest and enter politics are not able to do so, because they cannot match the money power which is there with these national parties.
And if you permit, that is what makes Arvind Kejriwal's contesting the election so much more significant in the country. Not that he is probably unlikely to do the same result, get the same result as in Delhi, but the fact that he is contesting makes a lot of difference, because that is what brings in some form of transparency in the people. This man, all said and done about his critics, has really been in a department which is not known for any great probity and rectitude, income tax. And he has been attacking all of them, all the political parties. No one has been able to throw a stone against him. So I would think that he is probably...
But he's been making sweeping allegations.
Maybe, but no one has been able to find out one clear case of, absence of rectitude in his case. And that is what makes his contesting the election so much more
Okay, Professor, let's just keep individuals aside for some time. General,
the individual actually representing a political concept, that is Aam Aadmi.
Okay, we generally don't comment on the individuals and the political parties. We just give statistics whatever they submit in the form of affidavits to the Election Commission of India, and we analyze those and give out reports. I would like to just add on to a little bit on what Mr. Ramachandran had mentioned earlier. I briefly mentioned about the section 77 of the RPA. There was a case in which the Supreme Court gave a ruling. This was Kanwarlal Gupta versus Union of India, 1975, wherein the Supreme Court said that it is very difficult to distinguish between the expenditure made by the political party and the candidate.
Right.
There is blurring of lines. After that Supreme Court judgment came, the government at that point of time passed an ordinance, and they inserted explanation 1 to section 77. Now this was a devious method to bypass the whole thing, that provision of 77, because that gives down that in case you do not submit proper report and details of your expenditure, you are liable to fine and imprisonment and all that. So therefore this explanation 1 was introduced, which said that any expenditure made by the candidate's agent or the political party on various political party programs will not be counted towards the expenditure of the candidate. So there you are, this is what is happening now, you see it, this is how they circumvent the whole thing. And the second issue was about the election petitions, which he mentioned. Normally, most of the important candidates, they file their nomination papers on the last day. Now the election petition is supposed to be filed within 45 days of the conclusion of the elections. So what happens, as it is the poor candidate is left, if anybody, any common man or the opponent or anyone wants to file an election commission against some malpractice or something which the other candidate has done, he is left with just 15 days.
Right.
In which he has to, access the whole thing, gather evidence, and then file the petition. It's not an easy thing. But anyway, there are some people who do manage to do that. And then what happens? Then the court case goes on and on and on, and the candidate against whom the election petition was filed finishes his 5-year term. This is what has been going on. I'm telling you, there are criminal cases pending against people for the last 20 years plus.
Yeah, that's it.
So unless there is political will to improve the system, because whenever there is a feeling amongst the political parties that this provision of the Supreme Court or this particular thing is against their common interest, they all gang up together, as you have seen in various cases.
So
Right.
that is why I think there cannot be easily a political will to eliminate these problems.
So clearly political parties cannot be expected to address this issue.
That is why Aam Aadmi is important. Aam Aadmi becomes so much more
All right.
relevant.
Absolutely. Aam Aadmi, not in the sense
by Aam Aadmi
party.
you mean common man.
Not
I
Aam
mean
Aadmi,
common
not-
man.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I mean common man,
Common
the
man.
citizen. So it is the pressure which the public,
Yeah.
the citizenry
Yeah.
has to, along with the judiciary and the civil service organizations, election commission, unless all these people continue to maintain pressure on the political parties,
Yeah.
things cannot improve.
Mr. Ramachandran, you know, if I could quote a 2009 study of ADR, around 96% of MPs have said that they have not spent a single penny on campaign workers. 8% have said they did not spend any money on any public meeting, and 73% have said that political parties didn't give them any money for this. But it seems bulk of the money is spent by political parties, which is shrouded in secrecy.
You know, on the very face of it, it's very difficult to accept that somebody has won an election like the Lok Sabha, and then he comes on to say, he or she comes on to say that they have not spent a penny on the campaigns
Right.
and the pandals and so on and so forth. I think a lot of your money by these leaders is taken away by their convoy of 25 to 30 cars and jeeps and all kinds of things. If you travel in a Lok Sabha constituency from point A to point B, you know, your constituency, the roads could be to the extent of 5,000 kilometers. If you were to travel those 5,000 kilometers in your 30-car convoy, where is the 70 lakhs? There is nothing left for you to do anything else. I think we are being very unreasonable, and some of the rules, as General quoted, were also very unreasonable. Who frames these rules? Let's first understand that. It is this parliament and the legislature which frames the rules. So for everything that you bring in, which one section feels is necessary to curb wasteful expenditure, there is another section which is formed, which is in these committees, these parliamentarians who are trying to circumvent these rules to help themselves. So there is a problem, as he rightly said. Do we have the political will to deal with it? We are talking about reforms for years and years and years.
Right.
Where are those reforms? Either in the entire system of elections or elsewhere. So therefore, I think, as I do agree with the general that, you know, there is no will among politicians to fix this problem and to use a path which seems to be straight in contesting elections, and there is a level playing field for all. There is no level playing field for, you know, if you're a real weak candidate, you're contesting on your own, you barely have 50,000 rupees. Where is the level playing field?
Right.
And this election commission constantly says, we have done this and we have done this. Now this new one, which they have brought out, a compendium on election expenditure monitoring. You know, this has been brought out in January this year.
Right.
And they have this huge, you know, list to say who will follow what, whom they are appointing in, and so on and so forth. What happens thereafter? That is the issue. Do you really get these kind of complaints? You know, very many people, you know, the kind of rigging that takes place itself costs the candidate a lot of money.
Right.
You know, he doesn't go scot-free. He has to give the cop who's there, he has to serve other people who are there, and that is how he manages to do it. I'm sorry for saying this, but this is a fact of life, but we must all realize. So therefore, I think we do an exemplary job to conduct the general elections where no less than 83 or 84 crore people go and exercise their franchise, which is not a joke by any stretch of imagination. I think on one side, the Election Commission of India is doing a yeoman's job in conducting these general elections. But on the other side, there are problems which need to be looked into.
Okay.
And this can only be done if you resort to high tech.
Right.
And it is available for you to resort to that.
Okay, so what steps can be taken to address this problem, and why we have so far failed to deal with the scourge of money power in elections? We'll discuss this when we return from this quick break. Stay with us.